Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be going over a bizarre position that arose in one of my recent tournament games. Here I'm playing fellow top player Joey Kravchik, and it's round 4 of the recent Scrabble Players Championship held in Las Vegas. I'm currently trailing by 88 points, the score is 375 to 287 in Joey's favor, and I'm sitting on this rack below EIRSSUW. There are 9 unseen tiles to meet, as we can see in the top right portion of my screen. So what that means is there are 2 tiles left in the bag and 7 tiles on Joey's rack. These 9 tiles are a blank, A, E, I, 2 M's, 2 O's, and an R. Of course, from my perspective, I have no idea which of these tiles are in the bag and which of these tiles are on Joey's rack. Now, at first it may seem that the solution to this position is completely obvious. After all, I do have an available bingo playable of Wussier making EW for 79 points. And this seems like a completely obvious play. After all, it's my only available bingo. It scores way more than any other option, and I have the dreaded WU combo on my rack, which is notoriously hard to do anything with, really, let alone bingo with. So given that, why wouldn't I want to take this opportunity to bingo with my WU combo and try to score as many points as possible to mount a comeback that might get me back into this game? And I did immediately see Wussier, but I also quickly realized that it had a major problem. And this problem is twofold. Number one, it empties the bag, so that I'll only have 2 tiles left while Joey will have all 7, so that's going to give him a lot more flexibility than it'll give me to score points in the endgame. And number 2 is I'll actually still be trailing after this play. After this play, the score will be 375 to 366 in Joey's favor as Wussier scores 79 points. And not only that, after Wussier, Joey is basically guaranteed to have a high-scoring play in the top right corner of the board in the spot that I'm highlighting right now with my red arrow. The problem is, if Joey has either of the M's, he's actually guaranteed to have a play that puts the M on the L1 double letter score, making MI, and either a 4 or 5 letter word across the top row that'll reach the triple at O1. And that'll score about 40 points, which puts Joey up 50 points following my bingo, which will easily be enough to win in the endgame after I play out for probably 10 or 20 points and get a couple more points from the tiles on his rack. For instance, he's very likely to have the word more, M-O-O-R, and if somehow both O's are in the bag, so he doesn't have that, he could play something like amber, starting at the K1 square, making as, an MI and several other valid 2-letter words. There is, of course, the possibility as well that both M's are in the bag, in which case Joey wouldn't have a high-scoring play in that spot. And that's the one case which is actually somewhat interesting, and I actually had to do some detailed math to figure out whether I could win in that event. So let's take a look. If I do bingo with Wussier, as we discussed, unless both M's are in the bag, for instance, in this case, if I even draw M blank, which is a really nice pull, as I mentioned before, Joey is just going to play more over here for 38 points and win very easily in the endgame. Just for illustrative purposes, if Joey plays more, my best outplay would be something like Sim over here for 21, and as we can see, Joey still wins quite comfortably by 20 points, and this is a particularly good scenario for me. Now, as I mentioned, if Joey does not have either M, so if both M's are in the bag, then he's going to have this rack here sitting on a 9-point lead. But the problem then is he can use the blank as an S to hook spec and play the word arioso, which will score reasonably well, and after my best scoring outplay, which is Mim, I'm going to still lose narrowly by 4 points. And I did manage to see this during the game. At first I thought after Wussier I'd maybe have some chances if I drew both M's, but then once I saw arioso and did the math using my high scoring outplay of Mim, I realized I was going to fall just short. So after going through all of this, I then realized that I was never going to win this game after Wussier. So with all that in mind, I had to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out if there was any other possible way I could try and steal this game. Now, I knew that if I didn't bingo immediately, I'd have to play only 1 or 2 tiles from my rack. Because if I play more than 2 tiles without bingoing, let's say I play 3, 4, 5, or 6 tiles from this rack, then I'm going to be emptying the bag and leaving myself fewer than 7 tiles on my rack in the endgame, so I won't have any bingo threats. And of course, Joey at that point will still be up like 60 or 70 points, and he'll be able to win in the endgame quite easily. So with that in mind, my next course of action was to determine whether I'd be better off playing 1 or 2 tiles from this rack. And my first instinct was to play 1 tile, because if I play 1 tile, then I leave 1 tile in the bag, whereas if I play 2 tiles, then I completely empty the bag. And it's generally best, when you can, to avoid emptying the bag, because emptying the bag gives your opponent perfect knowledge of the tiles you have remaining. And that allows them to play very precisely and exactly pinpoint what your biggest threats are and deal with them accordingly. Whereas if you leave 1 tile in the bag, even that introduces a lot of uncertainty for your opponent, because there are now 8 different racks that you could theoretically have, as there are now 8 different tiles that could possibly still be in the bag. So that's going to make it a lot harder for them to figure out what exactly your biggest threats are. It's quite often that from their perspective, it may be most likely that you hit 1 bingo line and they decide to block that bingo line. However, as it turns out, given the rack you have, you're able to hit the other bingo line and end up winning the game. So if you can, it's often best to leave a tile in the bag just to make your opponent's life more difficult and make it more likely that they'll choose the wrong space to block and you'll end up getting an out bingo and being able to steal the game that way. So that's why I first thought my best course of action was going to be to play 1 tile. And I then was tasked with trying to figure out, okay, if I play 1 tile, then what's the 1 tile I want to play? And it's pretty obvious that it's either got to be the W or the U. As I discussed, the W and U are basically like oil and water. They really go terribly together. So if I keep both of them on my rack, it's going to be pretty hard for me to draw a bingo that plays in multiple spots that Joey is not going to be able to simply block. So I considered 2 plays. The first play I considered was playing the W here with WE and WO for 10 points. And the second play was playing the U here with XU and UT for 11 points. At first, playing the W seemed promising because if I draw either of the 2 remaining M's, I'll be threatening to bingo with Surmise, making Spec and ER on the A column for 90 points. And if that gets blocked, I have a nice backup of Misuser or Mussier on row 2 over here, making EM, which will score 76. However, the problem is, if I draw one of the 2 M's, then based on the remaining tiles, every time Joey is either going to simply bingo himself or score enough points to outrun my out bingo. And let me show you why. So if I do draw one of the M's, then I know that Joey is going to have 7 of these 8 tiles. And the problem is, if the 1 remaining tile in the bag is any of the vowels, then Joey is going to simply bingo, of course, scoring more than enough points to win. So, for instance, if the A is in the bag, Joey could play roomies. If the E is in the bag, Joey could play mailroom through the L and tilde. If the I is in the bag, Joey could play moorage on row 2. And finally, if either O is in the bag, Joey has many bingos, such as romaine on row 2. So, I now had 3 more possibilities to consider. The M, the R, or the blank could be in the bag. If the M is in the bag, then Joey plays Arioso on the A column, making his blank an S for Spec, and this will give him enough of a lead to outrun me if I bingo out with Mussier on row 2. If instead the R is in the bag, then Joey can similarly play on the A column with something like Moose, and once again, that'll pretty comfortably outrun any bingos I might have to go out. Finally, if the blank is in the bag, then Joey can't play on the A column, but what he can do is simply play Aimer over here through the I and tilde, and that will be enough points to outrun me even if I do hit Surmise on the A column for 90. As once I do that and get 6 more points from Joey's rack, he's still going to win by 11 points. Now, you might ask, it's also possible after we that instead of drawing the M, I might draw the blank. And the problem is, if I draw the blank, then Joey's going to have at least one of the M's. And as we just saw, if Joey has at least one of the M's, then he's going to score easily enough points on row 2 to outrun my out bingo. And not only that, my out bingo is going to score a lot less if I draw the blank, because the M, when tripled, would be worth 9 points, whereas the blank, of course, would be worth 0. So I won't go through the math here, but it's not hard to see that if I draw the blank, Joey will simply use his M's on the second row, as we saw before, to outscore me with something like Aimer or even just Mim if he has both of the M's, and I'm going to lose easily. So with all that in mind, playing off the W here was out as a candidate way to win this game. But as we mentioned before, there is another one-tile play in this position worth considering, namely playing off the U in this spot for 11 points. The idea here is that if I draw the blank, I'll be threatening either swipers or swilers down the A column making spec, which would score 97 points. And if this gets blocked, I'll have as a lower scoring backup either of those two words, as well as a few other options on the second row here. So this looks fairly promising. However, as we'll see, just as with the previous option of playing off the W, this will fall just a little bit short regardless of what Joey has. So let's go ahead and see why. So if I do manage to draw the blank after playing off the U, I know that Joey will have 7 of the 8 unseen tiles I have now written below, A, E, I, M, M, O, O, R. Of course, my rack will now be the blank in addition to the 6 tiles I had before, E, I, R, S, S, W, which now appear on the right-hand side of the screen. And as it turns out, regardless of which of the 7 of these 8 tiles Joey has, he will be able to outrun my out bingo. And let's take a look at why. If Joey doesn't have the A, so if I draw the blank and the A is remaining in the bag, then Joey plays Mimer through the I and tilde, and this will score 33 points, which is enough to win because after I bingo out with swipers, I gain 8 points from his rack, and he holds on by a score of 408 to 403, winning by 5 points. If instead of the A, the E is in the bag, then it's even simpler because Joey just bingos with mailroom through the first L and tilde, of course winning the game quite easily. If the I is in the bag, it's just as if the A is in the bag, Joey plays Mimer and wins by a score of 408 to 403. If either of the M's are in the bag, it's a little bit more complicated, as now if Joey tries to take a similar approach and simply score as many points as he can with Aimer, then he's actually going to lose, because if I bingo out with swipers, I now win by 3 points, 407 to 404. So Joey needs to be a little bit more precise in this case. Instead of scoring as many as he can, he needs to play something like Moiler on the third row here, which blocks my highest scoring bingos with spec. Swipers and swilers there no longer play. So after Moiler, I would still bingo out on the second row with either Wussier or Wishers, but as we can see, this wouldn't score nearly as much as swilers or swipers, so after I get 10 points from Joey's rack, he will win by 8, 393 to 385. Now, going back here, if one of the O's is in the bag, then we simply have the same situation as before. Joey can play Mimer and win the game by 5 points. And finally, if the R is in the bag, Joey no longer has Mimer, but he does have the play of Mamie through this I, which will score enough points. Once again, I would bingo out with swipers, and this time come a bit closer, but still lose by 2. Joey would win 405 to 403. So once again, we've now gone through all the possibilities where I play off my U here and draw the blank. At that point, there were 8 tiles still unseen to me, so there were 8 different tiles that could still be in the bag, and we went through all of those possibilities and have now established that regardless of which one of those is true, even if I draw the blank, Joey will be able to score enough points to beat my out bingo. So therefore, we know that playing XU never wins. Of course, if I don't draw the blank, I won't be threatening those out bingos, and there's nothing to analyze. If I don't have an out bingo threat, I am never going to be winning this game. So, with that in mind, we now need to go back to the drawing board. In my original position, I had several options of playing off one tile, the best of which seemed to be playing the W here for 10 and the U here for 11, but neither of those are ever going to work. So we've eliminated bingoing immediately, we've eliminated one tile plays, the only thing we have left to look at is 2 tile plays. So I realized that if I was going to play 2 tiles in this position, I'd need to score a decent number of points, because playing 2 tiles would empty the bag, which would allow Joey to determine for certain whether I would be threatening a high-scoring out bingo on the A column hooking spec. And because of that, he'd be able to sacrifice points if needed to block if he knew I was threatening something. So I needed to make sure that whatever I played here left me close enough that if Joey blocked on his next turn, then a out bingo on my only remaining lane, which would be the second row here under the E in a tone, would score enough points to win. Once again, the problem is if I score a very small number of points here and empty the bag, and I do draw a high-scoring bingo on the A column, Joey simply plays a small play over there to block, and my lower-scoring out bingos on row 2 simply might not be enough to win the game. So because of that, I need to score enough points here so that out bingos on row 2 may actually win the game. And because of that, because of this need to score points here, I figured I had to part ways with my W, because I'm going to be able to score a lot more points using my W now than I will be able to if I don't use the W. And the first two-tile play I seriously considered was Wise over here in the bottom right. This is the highest scoring two-tile play I can make, and it scores 25 points. So this would bring me to within 63 points of Joey. And I first saw this and I figured if I drew M blank out of the bag, I might have some decent chances, because I'd be threatening to bingo out with Surmise on the A column with a blank E, as well as Mussier, Misuser, and a variety of other 7-letter bingos on row 2. Joey, of course, wouldn't be able to block both of them. However, as it turns out, this is going to fall just short, and let's see why. If I draw M blank, then this will be Joey's rack. And it turns out that he can actually safely block Surmise with Moral over here for 20 points. And it looks pretty scary, putting an M in the middle of a triple-triple line, knowing your opponent has a blank and multiple S's. But at the same time, it's not scary precisely because you know that's what your opponent has. And it turns out, with this combination of letters, I'm not going to have any triple-triples or even bingos that play through that M. So it's perfectly safe for Joey to do this. My best play is to simply bingo out on row 2, and Joey will hold on and win by 3 points. So Wise does not win if I draw M blank out of the bag. And there really aren't any other two-tile draws besides M blank after Wise that could potentially help me. Because if I don't draw the blank, then it's pretty easy to see that in most cases Joey just bingos out himself, and even when he can't, it's not hard for him to make a play very similar to the play of Moral we saw before that'll block my highest scoring bingo on the A column if I even have one, and pretty comfortably win the game. If I draw something like blank A, that'll leave me plenty of available bingos on both the A column and the second row, but the problem is that without an M, my bingos simply aren't going to score enough. And not only that, with both M's himself, Joey will be able to simply score enough to outrun even bingos I may hit on the A column. So by way of example, let's say instead of M blank, I draw something like A blank out of the bag. So in that case, Joey would have this rack here. And he could play something like Mimer through this eye, which wins pretty comfortably after I bingo out on the A column. Even actually just Mim is enough points. Because if he plays Mim and I bingo out with something like Souries on the A column, he actually holds on to win by a point. So I don't even need to go past Mim. Once I see that he has both M's, it's immediate for me once I do this math that whatever I might draw on the A column, it's simply not going to be enough to outrun him if I don't have an M. So that pretty much disposes of Wise. And the next thing I briefly looked at was the play of EW over here, which plays off the same two tiles as Wise, but the idea is that it doesn't allow plays like the play of Moral that we saw before, which was a problem for me on the fourth row. So after EW, I once again looked at what happens if I draw M blank out of the pool. And in this case, the problem isn't Moral, it's Morel on the third row. And he actually could have played Morel instead of Moral before, it wouldn't have mattered, but now Morel is the word that fits because he needs the E to front hook EEW. And once again, if he plays Morel, I have no playable bingos on the A column, so I'll have to settle for an out bingo on the second row, and Joey will hold on and win by 7. And just like with Wise, there's really nothing besides an M blank draw that could conceivably help me here for the same reasons. If I don't draw a blank, then Joey can simply just bingo or make a similar play and win the game easily. And if Joey has both M's, then by similar logic, he can just play Mim or Mime or Mimer or something on the second row and outrun anything I might draw on the A column, as it'll just have a blank and a bunch of 1-pointers. So now that I had disposed of the highest scoring 2-tile plays, another idea came to mind. A repeating theme we've seen in all of these variations we've looked at is that if Joey has at least one of the M's, he can often score enough points with it to simply outrun any bingo I might have. And the majority of his high-scoring M plays tend to be on row 2 through this I and tilde with a play like Mim or Aimer. So the idea that came to me was, what if I actually try to make a 2-tile play that not only helps my rack, but also blocks these high-scoring M plays? Even if I sacrifice a couple points on this turn, if Joey can't score enough points with his M's, maybe there's some circumstance where with the right draw, he won't be able to score enough to outrun me. And that led me to consider the next play I looked at, which is the play of Wis, W-I-S, through the I and tilde, which scores 17 points. Now, this is significantly less. It's 8 less points than the play of Wise I considered in the bottom right. But now, as we'll see, Joey has a lot fewer options when it comes to scoring and potentially outrunning my bingos. And not only that, I keep an E on my rack, which makes my rack a bit more flexible in the endgame, and it makes it a little bit more annoying for Joey to adequately deal with all my bingo threats. So let's take a look at how this works in action. Now, I knew that just as with the other plays I was looking at, to have any chance, I would almost certainly need to draw the blank as well as one of the M's. I knew for sure that if I didn't get one of the M's, then my out bingo simply wasn't going to score enough. So for instance, let's say I do draw the blank, but I miss the M's. Like if I draw R blank or something such as that. Then Joey is going to have this rack right here. And of course, I'm threatening many out bingos on the A column as well as on row 2, but Joey can simply allow me to bingo out on the A column with something like Mimeo, scoring well and unloading both of his M's. I bingo out with any of various words here, and Joey holds on to win by 7. It's also worth mentioning that drawing 2 M's here is kind of interesting because it would give me rummies on row 2, as well as the even higher scoring Imurs on column A, which would score quite a lot. It would actually score 100 points. But if this happens, then Joey would be able to use his blank. He would have A-E-I-O-O-R blank, assuming that's what I draw, and he'd be able to use his blank to play Arioso on the A column, which scores pretty well and also blocks the higher scoring Emirs. And after I go out with Rummies or Mumsier, which actually scores 2 more than Rummies, he would hold on and win by 5 points. So M is actually an interesting draw to look at after Wis, but just like draws such as R blank, it falls a little bit short. So the final draw we want to look at, of course, is M blank. And this, folks, does turn out to do the trick. If I draw M blank, then this will be Joey's final rack after Wis. And here he actually has no way to win. And the reason is he's up 71, but I'm threatening once again to play something like Imurs or Surmise on the A column, which will score quite a lot of points. And if that's blocked, I also have Rummies on row 2. And amazingly, there's nothing Joey can do in this position. Earlier, when we were looking at what happens if I play Wise in the bottom right corner instead of Wis, we noted that Joey can win by playing Moral, because it wouldn't give me any 8-letter bingos back through the M. However, in that case, I didn't have an E, I had a second S instead of the E, and in this case, that doesn't work, because I now have many 8s I can triple out with, such as Premiums and Rummiest, all of which score 149 points, and will win this game easily. Playing Moral on this row doesn't help Joey either, as now I have Rummiest, which scores even more. It scores 176 points, and of course wins the game handily. So instead, Joey has a few other options he could consider. He could try to get rid of as many tiles as he can with something like Rumi on row 2, but this is going to fall well short after I bingo out with something like Umpires. He could also try to simply score as many points as he could with the play of Male on row 3, which scores 21, but is also going to lose after I bingo out and win by 7. Another option might be to play meal on row 3, which does block plays like umpires and immures, but it still allows me to win if I play surmise in this spot, making spec and ER, and I would win by 5. There's also the possibility of Joey trying to play a 5-letter word to one of these L's that doesn't start with the M, with the idea of not giving me back a bingo on column A. The most intriguing of these possibilities is email to the second L and tilde, with the idea being that if I bingo out with rummies on row 2, Joey now wins by 1. But the problem is, email gives me back a sneaky bingo of emeritus on the A column, which isn't a triple-triple, but does score 85 points, which is just enough and wins for me by 4 points. The problem is, if he plays something that doesn't give me any bingo whatsoever on column A, he's not going to be able to use his M. So his best option would be to play the word Oriel, O-R-I-E-L, in either spot. It scores a little bit more here. So if he plays Oriel, I don't have anything now that plays on column A. However, I do have rummies still on row 2, and now this is going to win by 3 for me because Oriel scores the same as email, but it doesn't get rid of his M, so I'm going to be getting a few extra points in the endgame from the unplayed M on his rack, and that's going to be the deciding factor. So Oriel doesn't work, and it turns out there is nothing else here that works. So if we ask Championship Player for choices, we will see that Quackle Championship Player in this endgame does not come up with any ways for Joey to win. And indeed, Champ will confirm that Oriel is indeed Joey's best play here. There's nothing else Joey can do. We looked at email and we saw that loses. Plays of Mool simply don't play enough tiles. Once again, I'm going to bingo out with rummies and win by a couple points, and there's simply nothing else Joey can do. Once again, he can't block both column A bingos and rummies. He can't simply score enough to outrun column A bingos, and he can't effectively block column A bingos without giving me something else back or scoring enough to outrun rummies. So there you have it, guys. After WIS, if I do pull M blank out of the bag, I will manage to win this game. And indeed, WIS is the only play, as far as I've been able to tell, that gives me any mathematical chance of winning this game. So now it comes time to go over what actually happened in the game. In this position, I did miraculously find WIS. I did manage to, just barely as I was getting under time pressure, go through the vast majority of all of these lines in detail. I knew for sure that Wassier was never going to win. I knew that fishing off one tile was not going to work, and I was pretty confident that my play of Wise in the bottom right was not going to be enough either after I drew M blank. So with that in mind, I looked at WIS, and I was pretty confident that I had the endgame solved. I was pretty confident that if I drew M blank, Joey didn't have a play that won. It was a little bit difficult, though, to go through all of these different endgame possibilities like Oriel and email and just be absolutely sure that I was going to be able to hold on in all those situations. I don't think I had everything worked out 100% in detail, but in any case, I was fairly confident that WIS would win if I drew M blank, and I couldn't find anything else that gave me a chance, so I indeed did go for WIS. And miraculously, I did draw M blank out of the bag, as crazy as that sounds. So the odds of that happening, just for fun, are actually 1 in 18. Because with 9 unseen tiles, there are 9 choose 2, or 36 different possible 2-tile combinations I could pull from the bag. And there are 2 ways I could draw M blank, because there's 1 blank and 2 M's. So I could draw the blank and the first M, or the blank and the second M. So 2 out of 36, or 1 in 18, which is just a hair over 5%, are the chances of this happening. And yet it did. I drew M blank, and indeed, in this position, Joey spent the remainder of his time trying to find a way to win the game, and correctly concluded there was no such way to do it, so he ended up playing Meal on row 3, which is a very good play. I was down to about 15 seconds at this point, and it does force me to find the play of Surmise down the A column, which I had already worked this out on Joey's time. Of course, knowing I only had 10 or 15 seconds, I knew I'd have to get my play down and designate the blank as quickly as possible, because an overtime penalty of 10 points would easily make the difference in this close a game. So I was prepared for meal. I was prepared for a lot of different possibilities. I was also prepared for email, because I was sort of thinking in this position, Joey would maybe play email. It seems like probably to me, the most effective way to try to induce me to make a mistake, because it's a play I might not be expecting, putting an E right in the middle of the triple lane, and it forces me to find Emeritus, which is a bit of a tricky 8. With his play of meal, it's more likely that I had Surmise already prepared to go down as a backup to umpires. It turns out I did see Emeritus, so I was anticipating this possibility. However, I do think it's a little bit more likely that email could have caught me off guard and allowed Joey to maybe steal this game if I panicked and I wasn't able to come up with or get Emeritus down on time. However, as it turns out, he played meal. I bingoed with Surmise on the A column, and I ended up winning this game by 5 points. So pretty insane stuff that I was able to not only have the wherewithal in this position to pass up my tempting 79-point WU bingo of Wussier, but also to figure out the seemingly only play that gave me a mathematical chance to win this game. Not only that, but it actually happened. So really, really wild stuff. I don't know if this is actually my most brilliant play of all time, in the sense of it's certainly not a brilliant display of word finding or anything like that, but I do think it's certainly a brilliant display of strategy and understanding of the game, and a lot of the complexities surrounding pre-endgames and the later stages of these kind of positions. So I think it is probably just because of the way it worked out, and that it is the only play, as far as I can tell, that actually gives me a chance. I think from a strategic and mathematical standpoint, it is the most brilliant play I've ever made. So I wanted to make a video on that. I hope you guys enjoyed it and were able to follow along and learn something from this in-depth analysis. If anyone is able to find a play that wins other than WIS in any circumstance, I'd love to see it. I've been unable to generate it using my own manual simulations and also running Quackle, but of course neither of those are perfect. So if anyone or maybe someone who has access to a more precise endgame engine does locate another variant that has any chance of winning, or especially a variant that may actually be better than WIS, I'd love to hear about it. I feel fairly confident it doesn't exist, but I've been proven wrong before. So like I said, if you see anything else, definitely let me know. But yeah, in the meantime, crazy that I was able to pull this out, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will hopefully be bringing you more positions soon from these tournaments. I certainly had, this was probably the most crazy finish to a game I had, but I certainly had a few other fun moments, so be on the lookout for those. And yeah, thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.